Saturday night, I'm holding short of runway 10, getting ready to take off for what I expect to be a quick and uneventful flight. South along the shoreline to Miami and back, followed up by 3 takeoffs and landings in the pattern at Pompano to extend my night currency for another 90 days. I've flown this route multiple times, day and night, but tonight it'll be a little bit different because I'll experience what's called a black hole departure for the very first time. It's just after 9 o'clock. I've been at the airport about 20 minutes, had to wait out a pop-up rain shower. Now that that's cleared, I'm getting the airplane ready to go. We had some rain earlier in the day, but everything appears to be clearing up. My pre-flight weather briefing indicated absolutely no convective activity, some scattered showers north near Palm Beach, and some scattered stuff south of Miami, but nothing that should interfere with my route of flight. The winds are out of the east, favoring runway 10, which means I'll depart to the east, fly runway heading, and then when I cross the shoreline, I'll make a right turn to head southbound along the shore. During pre-flight, I accidentally switched off the audio recorder, so there'll be no ATC recordings or cockpit audio on this flight. It's after 9 o'clock and the tower's closed. I'm getting ready to take off on runway 10, and I've made my call on the CTAP that I'll be departing south along the shoreline. My takeoff roll was absolutely normal. 47 Lima Hotel was making good power, my engine instruments were green, and when I reached 60 knots, I pulled back to rotate off the runway. I flew runway heading and began climbing to 1,000 feet, headed toward the shoreline. I was in VFR conditions with good visibility, but there was a high overcast ceiling. I'd fly runway heading on the departure leg, climb to about 1,000 feet, make a right turn, and then slowly descend down to 500 feet for my transition southbound through Fort Lauderdale. So far, nothing new. The same VFR South Shoreline departure that I've made many times, both daytime and at night. And then as I crossed the shoreline, it hit me. Pitch black. I couldn't see anything. I always knew this was a possibility taking off over the water at night, and yet, the startle factor was real. Even though I knew better, I was tempted to look outside and try to locate the shoreline. Looking away from the instruments at a time like this is a mistake that can get even experienced pilots killed. Instead, I followed my training, focused on the instruments, kept the wings level, and maintained my altitude. Then, I entered a standard rate turn to the right, planning to roll out on a 180 heading. After about 45 seconds, it felt like an eternity, the shoreline came into view, and I could exhale. Once I was established from the turn, I also began a gradual descent down to 500 feet, the altitude that I was expecting to be assigned for the shoreline transition. Just like that, it was time to contact Fort Lauderdale Tower and request my southbound transition. My transition was approved along the shore at or below 500 feet. I'd maintain that until south of Fort Lauderdale Airport. Then I would climb to 1,000 feet, I'd be switched over to Miami. I'd keep the SWAT code, and I'd also have flight following all the way down to Virginia Key and back. VFR flight following is always helpful because of the traffic alerts and other services provided by ATC. As I was passing Paulover Inlet, they alerted me to an area of heavy precipitation that had popped up at my 12 o'clock about 2 miles ahead. In foreflight, I could also see the precipitation popping up, although it looked to be a little farther offshore. Their radar is a lot more accurate than mine, and since I wasn't on an instrument flight plan, I had no interest in flying through any kind of precipitation. I made a 180-degree left turn so that I could head back north. As I approached Fort Lauderdale, I'd descend down to 500 feet again, and I'd get a good view of Port Everglades, Fort Lauderdale International Airport, and downtown Fort Lauderdale off of my left wing. As I reached Hillsborough Inlet, I made a left turn to enter the left downwind for runway 10 to make the first of what would be the 3 full stop landings that I'd need to extend my night currency for another 90 days. Make my standard radio calls as I was entering the downwind, turning downwind to base, and then base to final. There was nobody in the pattern, so I had the airport all to myself. After exiting the runway, I taxi back to runway 10 and make my additional 2 takeoffs and landing. After my 2 landings, as I taxied back to the ramp, I started thinking about what, if anything, I could have done differently. I never experienced a black hole scenario before, even though I knew it was always possible whenever I took off over the water at night. I think the key lesson for me is to treat every nighttime departure to the east like a 0-0 takeoff. That means, as much as practical, eyes inside focused on the instruments, just like they would be on an IFR departure. That would help eliminate that awkward moment between the loss of visual reference and the time it took me to transition to the instruments. Still, my training kicked in and I reacted exactly as I was supposed to. Pilot certificate is a license to learn. I'm really glad this happened tonight because even though it was uncomfortable, it'll help me be a better pilot in the future.